Indians looking to start a life abroad have traditionally chosen either US or UK to study or work. But over the past 15 years, there has been a growing interest in Europe for a host of reasons. From studying in some of the leading universities, be it in Germany, Netherlands, France, Sweden, Denmark, and a few others, to job opportunities in multiple industries across these countries, Europe has steadily become one of India's favorite NRI destinations. But while some NRIs are clear on whether they wish to settle down permanently in Europe or not, there are others like me who face a little bit of a dilemma on if and when to return to India. Hello friends, and welcome back to The Happy Host. Today I wish to share with you stories of my own and of my friends in Europe on our thoughts about returning to India and what are the factors we consider when deciding on if and when we should return to India. For all those who are new to my channel, please do not forget to subscribe. And for all those who have been supporting my channel, thank you so much. Please continue to show your love. Now, before we start, a bit of background about myself for the benefit of those who are new to my channel. I'm an Indian. I grew up in India. My first job was in India, and within 3 years of my first job, I was placed in New York in USA. I spent 3 years in US and I returned to India. After returning, I switched jobs, and through each job, I was then placed in multiple foreign locations, for example, in London, Singapore, Hong Kong, and so on. But every time I had decided to return back to India, which I did. And now, for the last 7 years, I'm based in Europe. I live in Sweden and travel extensively across Europe for work. Now, the previous instances, I believe it was much easier for me to decide on my return. I was much younger and I was always traveling alone. My family was always back in India. I used to feel very homesick, and that was the single most important factor based on which I had always decided to return to India. But I think as we grow older, our personal and professional responsibilities increase in parallel. And that is why we are torn between these two options of returning to India or settling abroad, because each of these options have their own pros and cons. And that is where decision making becomes a little bit difficult. If I take my own instance, I arrived in Europe in early 2018, and just like my other foreign assignments, my plan was to live in Europe for about 2 to 3 years and return to India somewhere around the middle or end of 2020. But then, as we all know, it was early 2020 when the world got infected with coronavirus. There were lockdowns everywhere, travel restrictions, health hazards, a lot of casualties and deaths due to coronavirus. In the middle of all this, Sweden was the only country in the world which did not have so much problems because of the coronavirus. There was never any lockdowns. Of course, there were all the precautions, we were all vaccinated, but the risk of contagion was not as high as in the rest of the world. For example, in India, where I wanted to return. So my family and me, we discussed and we decided that this was probably not the right time to return to India and I should continue living in Sweden. So I continued. And during this time, I also got promoted at work. I took up more responsibilities. So by the time Corona eased out a bit, I had started traveling extensively across UK and Europe. So now, when I start thinking about returning to India, of course, the personal bit is definitely there. Along with that, I also have to balance my professional priorities, where I have to now travel so much within Europe. So imagine if I have to live in India and travel constantly across Europe. So that would be a strain on my own health as well. The decision to stay in Europe or return to India will depend on weighing multiple different dimensions of life. For example, your personal, your professional, the financial part, socio-economic, and so many others. But this will be different for each individual and for each family. And that is why every family, every individual's decision will be different. Indians come to Europe mainly for studies or work. Now, if we consider the economic and financial aspects, for students, Europe offers some of the world's top universities, say in Germany, France, Sweden, and others. The cost of education in Europe is much more affordable than in US or other parts of the world. The post-study work visas for students are way more favorable than in several other countries. For job seekers, the Europe market is now opening up with a lot of opportunities in various industries, for example, your financial services, manufacturing, technology, engineering, academia. And the average wage levels in Europe are way higher than in India. Of course, in India also we know the market is booming. There are a lot of opportunities in various different industries. And the salaries in some of the metro cities, for example, your Delhi, Bangalore, Mumbai, they are very, very competitive. But on an average, in other cities in India, the wage levels are still lower than what you can get in Europe. So on that front, I think your financial and economic stability is much higher in Europe than in India. So if your financial targets are more short-term in nature, for example, paying off a student loan or repaying that home loan back in India, then you may decide to stay in Europe for a few years, make that kind of investment and saving, and then return. But if you are looking for longer-term benefits, for example, post-retirement, social security benefits, healthcare benefits, then you will have to stay in the country for a little longer. So that will influence your decision. Now, if we consider the personal aspects, well, Europe, of course, offers a very high quality of life, clean air, no pollution, stress-free life, a healthy work-life balance, strong infrastructure, excellent public transport system. So all these go in favor of our personal lives in Europe. But in spite of the very high quality of life in Europe, we who come from India at times feel very lonely and isolated because we lack social connections here. And Europe, as it is a very quiet region, and the weather in most parts of the year is very cold and dark. Compare that to India, well, yes, we know that we do have traffic congestion, there's air pollution, infrastructure may not be as good as Europe, but still India is home. It is where our family lives. It is much more vibrant than what I have seen in Europe. Returning to India can offer closer ties with our family and provide that emotional support which we lack when we are away from our families. And just like me, when I speak to my other friends living abroad, we all have a sense of guilt within us of staying so far away from our families, from our elderly parents who need our help and care, that we are not able to do as much for them as we want to. These are sometimes the factors which drive our decision to return to India. So we should be ready to give up one or the other when we are making this kind of a decision. In many countries in Europe, getting a citizenship is much easier than in US or UK. So a lot of my friends and people that I know here in Europe have taken up citizenship, but whenever we speak, they always say that their heart is still in India. Socio-cultural aspects also play an important role in our decision of whether to settle in Europe or return to India. We who have been raised in India deeply value our culture and heritage. Every country in Europe has a strong Indian community, but still we miss a lot of that Indian culture and traditions while living in Europe. Indian children who are raised in Europe get caught between these two cultures, the Indian and the European. And they may not be able to appreciate our traditions and cultures because they are far removed from India. So Indians living in Europe find it difficult to move back to India if their kids are a little older, because for the kids to integrate back into the Indian culture may be a bit of a challenge. So if you want to move back to India, you have to do it at the right time when your children are in a position so that they can adapt to the Indian way of life. If you've spent a considerable amount of time working in Europe and got adjusted to the relaxed work culture here in Europe, returning to India might give you a reverse culture shock because of the complete contrasting work culture back in India, which is very hectic and stressful. If you are living in Europe and are close to retirement, then your return to India or not will be driven by your decision on the post-retirement life convenience. Europe offers good pension plans and social security benefits after retirement. In contrast, if you return to India after retirement, you can be with your family, enjoy a lower cost of living, and take advantage of the warmer climate there. While Europe offers economic stability, a high standard of living, and diverse opportunities, India provides family connections, emotional support, cultural roots, and the potential for economic growth in a rapidly developing nation. The decision to stay in Europe or return to India is driven by multiple factors which are deeply personal and depends on individual circumstances, priorities, and long-term goals. There is nothing right or wrong about returning to India or staying in Europe. It is just about weighing the opportunities and the advantages which each place offers. And it is your decision to choose which one works best for you. So these were some of the considerations which me and my friends in Europe have been discussing for the past few months now. I would love to hear your feedback. What are your considerations when you think about either settling down in Europe or moving back to India? If you like my content, please subscribe to my channel and like, share, and comment on this video. Hope to see you again next week with a new topic. Till then, bye-bye.